Welcome to Underrated Democracy.
For the question, Mr. Speaker, the one important issue for Canadians to bring costs down, Mr. Speaker. That's why, Mr. Speaker, that's what we did in the last iteration that he's talking about, Mr. Speaker. The way to bring costs down in Canada is to have more competition. The way to have more competition is to have a fourth national player. That's what we deliver for Canadians. We're always going to stand up for Canadians to make sure that prices go down in this country.
Member for Hamilton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure you the way to bring costs down is not to appoint Liberal insiders to executive positions at Rogers. And the fact that he doesn't even know what the problem is just shows how out of touch they are with Canadians. They greenlit the Rogers-Shaw merger even though the Competition Bureau said it was a bad deal for consumers. And now the former industry minister gets an executive position at Rogers. With this Liberal-Rogers merger almost complete, Canadians have a right to know which Liberal insider had influence and was involved in the approval process, and when was the last time the Prime Minister or the Industry Minister...
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, let me provide a bit of background to the member. Actually, we denied the transfer of license from Shaw to Rogers, Mr. Speaker. It's this government who stood up to the big telco, Mr. Speaker. We put 21 conditions. This has never been done in Canada's history, and Mr. Speaker, you know why? Because Canadians have asked us to bring price down. That's what we did. The way to do that is to competition and to have a fourth national player. Mr. Speaker, Canadians know on which side we stand. We stand on their side.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Hill.
This meeting, as Conservatives have put forth a motion, an emergency meeting to resume this committee, because one of the things we can do effectively as our role in official opposition is to call out the government when they've made promises to Canadians. And the promise that was made was that cell phone bills would not increase. And we've seen a significant disparaging... We've seen that not come true right now, basically with what's happening. So we've put forth a motion, which we're going to be discussing here today. And in regard to the motion that my colleague, Mr. Perkins, has put forward in relation to recent reports that Rogers will increase customer cell phone bills following a pledge by Rogers CEO Tony Staffieri that prices are going to come down as part of the $26 billion Rogers-Shaw merger approved by the Liberal Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry after committee experts and the Competition Commissioner warned that the deal would lead to higher prices for consumers. The committee therefore agrees to be immediately recalled to undertake a study of up to 4 meetings of at least 2 hours per meeting to study the impact of Liberal approved merger, and that these meetings begin at the earliest opportunity and conclude by Friday, January 26th.
When Liberals promised the prices would go down, and they're actually going up. And TELUS and Bell are refusing to answer the media questions in response to Rogers' increase about what they plan to do. So, if they weren't planning to increase prices, we know that they would say, we're not planning to increase prices to the media. So I guess they must be planning increases as well, or they would come clean on that and publicly.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians pay the highest cell phone rates in the world, and in fact, Rogers customers pay the highest cell phone rates in Canada. The minister has stated that the Rogers-Shaw deal would alleviate those prices, but instead, in typical Liberal fashion, we're seeing it's only benefiting Liberal friends and donors while Canadians pay. Days after the announcement of the Rogers-Shaw merger, the former industry minister was appointed, and you remember he was responsible for reducing cell phone bills by 25% to the Rogers board of directors. Why is it always that Liberal friends and insiders benefit while Canadians have to pay?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I think my colleague is somehow missing the point, actually, Mr. Speaker. Who are winning are Canadians, Mr. Speaker. I so wish that for those who are watching at home, they should listen to people. Canadians have asked us to do one thing, Mr. Speaker, is to bring price down in telcos. The way to do that in Canada, Mr. Speaker, is to more competition. The way to do that is to have a fourth national player. Mr. Speaker, we have imposed the longest series of conditions in Canada's history to make sure that the telcos will deliver for Canadians as Canadians expect in their everyday life.
Member for Bay of Quinte.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if you believe that I actually have a Rogers cell phone plan to sell you. This Prime Minister promised in 2000 2015 to reduce cell phone bills by 25%. In fact, last year announced in this House that they reduced cell phone bills by 25%, when the reality is that Canadians have never been cell phone bills so high since these Liberals have been in power. The former industry minister told Canadians he was going to negotiate with Rogers. Canadians didn't know he was just negotiating for a corner office at Rogers. Why are the Liberal insiders and friends always benefiting on the backs of hard-working Canadians?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians who are watching at home know these conservatives, Mr. Speaker. They know exactly that they're good to bring all these conspiracy theories. We've heard an hour of them today, Mr. Speaker. But one thing they know who they can trust to have their back, Mr. Speaker. It's this government. That's exactly what we've done, Mr. Speaker. That's why what they told us is to bring prices down for Canadians. They wanted more competition, Mr. Speaker. And the way to do that is to have a fourth national player.
I'm sorry, I'm struggling to hear the answer. If I can ask the minister to start over so I can hear the full response, please.
Mr. Speaker, we will take no lessons from these conservatives. Actually, they even asked me from Volkswagen, Mr. Speaker. Those are the conservatives who let the auto sector down in 2011. Those are the conservatives who let the people, the good people of St. Thomas and Southwestern Ontario down, Mr. Speaker. Those are the conservatives who let 8,000 workers go down in 2011 in St. Thomas, Mr. Speaker. One thing Canadians have seen last Friday is that we invest in people, we invest in our worker, we invest in Canada. That's what Confident Nation are doing, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member first.
That Canadians pay 20% more than Americans and 170% more than Australians for the average cell phone package.